Open the damn door, Jade! Your sister is dying because of you! Do you want her blood on your hands again? The intercom shrieked with Dominic's voice, a jagged blade of sound that sliced through the quiet of my Chicago penthouse. On the security monitor, my father's face was a mask of calculated agony. Beside him, Beatrice sobbed into a silk handkerchief, while Ivy, my sadistic sister, played the part of a girl on the verge of collapse. I stood in my kitchen, my feet cold on the marble, holding a cup of black coffee that had gone stone cold. 8 years. It had been 8 years since I ran away, and yet here they were, bringing the stench of my past to my doorstep. She's stopping breathing, Jade. Open this door, or I'll have the police kick it down. Dominic roared, slamming his fist against the mahogany wood. I felt a surge of white-hot rage. Not fear. Never again. I walked to the door and twisted the deadbolt. The door exploded inward. Dominic charged in, his expensive wool coat smelling of rain and arrogance. He didn't check Ivy's pulse. He marched into my living room, eyes scanning the 20-foot ceilings and original oil paintings. Nice place, he spat, the terrified father act vanishing. Is this what you bought with the life you stole from us? Beatrice dragged Ivy inside, slamming the door. Ivy wasn't dying. She stood up straight, her eyes darting around my home with predatory hunger. She ran a finger over a $5,000 crystal vase, her lip curling in envy. Get your hands off my things, I said, my voice vibrating with a lethal calm. Oh, shut up, Jade, Beatrice snapped. We aren't here for a tour. Ivy made a calculation error at the foundation. She borrowed $250,000. The audit is Monday. We need you to ghost the entries. Make the numbers dance. You embezzled $250,000 from a children's charity, I clarified, my heart hammering like a war drum. And you want me to commit federal wire fraud to cover it? It's not fraud if it's family, Beatrice shrieked. You owe us! We kept you fed for 16 years! You kept me fed? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. You mean the secret where Ivy's actions led to a deep gash on my shoulder because I wouldn't give her my savings? The secret where you told the paramedics I fell while I was losing consciousness? I pulled back my sleeve, revealing the silvery scar on my shoulder. This is the only thing you ever gave me for free. Dominic slammed his hand onto the marble counter. Enough! You have the credentials. Erase the trail or I'll tell the board you've been funneling money to us for years. I'll ruin you. I won't do it, I said, each word a block of ice. I'm not that broken girl on the kitchen floor anymore. I don't care about Ivy's future, and I certainly don't owe you a damn thing. Ivy stepped forward, her face twisting into something menacing. You think you're so smart, Jade? She looked at Dominic, a silent, sickening signal passing between them. Dad, she's being unstable again. I think she's losing control. I froze. What are you talking about? Dominic didn't answer. He dialed 911. Emergency! He sobbed into the phone, the performance terrifyingly real. My daughter, Jade, she's turned volatile. She's confronting her sister. There's a struggle. Please, she's agitated. Stop this, I breathed, backing away. Ivy didn't run. She looked at me with a sickening grin. You should have just fixed the logs, sis. She recoiled, gasping for breath as she slumped to the floor, instantly switching into a roll. She began to scream, her voice filled with a practiced terror designed to reach the ears of anyone listening nearby. It was a flawless, haunting performance of a victim that didn't exist. Help me! She's harming me! Jade, please stop! Dominic began overturning furniture and smashing lamps, creating a scene of disarray in seconds. Showtime, he whispered to me, his eyes cold and dead, just as the blue and red lights began to pulse against the windows from 40 floors below. The elevator chimed, The nightmare had officially begun. The hallway erupted. The heavy thud of tactical boots on the carpet sounded like a firing squad approaching. "Hands in the air! Get on the ground! Now!" The commands were deafening. 2 officers from the Chicago PD burst through the doorway, their service weapons drawn and flashlights blinding me. In the chaos of my living room, the scene was a masterpiece of deception. Ivy lay in a heap by the door, her blood staining the floorboards I had meticulously polished just yesterday. Beatrice was on her knees, wailing like a widow, while Dominic stood over them, his hands raised in a gesture of frantic surrender. "She's over there! Please, she's lost it! She just started hitting Ivy!" Dominic yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. I didn't resist. I couldn't. My body had gone into a state of cellular shutdown, a biological reflex I hadn't felt in 10 years. As the lead officer tackled me to the ground, slamming my chest against the hard marble, the air left my lungs in a painful grunt. The cold bite of steel ratcheted tight around my wrists. "I didn't touch her," I gasped, my cheek pressed against the floor. "Check the cameras. She did it to herself." "Shut your mouth," the officer barked. As they hauled me up, my shoulder joint popped, sending a white-hot spark of agony through the old scar under my robe. In that moment, the luxury penthouse vanished. The smell of expensive espresso and rain was replaced by the metallic scent of rust and cheap floor wax. I was 16 again. I was back on the kitchen floor in Ohio. The memory didn't come in flashes. It hit me with the weight of a freight train. I remembered the weight of the carving knife Ivy had used, a heavy, serrated thing. I remembered the way the blood felt, hot, sticky, and far too much of it. I remembered looking up at Beatrice, my vision blurring, reaching out for help. But Beatrice hadn't looked at me. She had walked right over my bleeding body, stepping over her firstborn as if I were a spilled bag of groceries, to comfort Ivy. "Oh, baby, it's okay." They dragged me toward the elevator. As I passed Ivy, she let out a pathetic, whimpering moan. But as our eyes met for a split second, her expression shifted. Beneath the blood and the tears, there was a flicker of pure, unadulterated triumph. Dominic caught my gaze, too. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked satisfied. He leaned in as the officers pushed me past him and whispered just loud enough for only me to hear. 250,000, Jade. That was the price of your freedom. Now you'll pay it in years." The elevator doors slid shut, sealing them inside my sanctuary while I was led away in shame. 20 minutes later, I was in the back of a squad car, staring at the neon lights of the city through a wire mesh. My mind was racing, stripping away the shock and replacing it with the cold, analytical logic that had made me the best in my field. They thought they had me. They thought this was Ohio all over again, where their word was law and my silence was guaranteed. But they had made a fatal error. They had forgotten who I became after I ran away. I wasn't just Jade, the girl who survived. I was Jade, the woman who tracked shadows for a living. I spent my days finding the untraceable, following digital breadcrumbs that monsters thought they had swept away. I took a deep breath, forcing the trembling in my hands to stop. My heart rate slowed. I looked at the officer driving the car. "Officer," I said, my voice no longer shaking. It was flat, hard, and professional. "I know exactly what my father told you. I also know that Ivy's nose is broken in a way that's physically impossible to inflict with a punch from where I was standing." "Save it for the station, lady," he muttered. Oh, I'll save it, I whispered to the dark interior of the car. I'll save every single bite of it. I felt the weight of the secret I hadn't told them. My penthouse wasn't just a home. It was a fortress, and in a house full of glass, I had installed the one thing they never saw coming. An encrypted, motion-activated cloud-syncing server hidden behind the drywall of the pantry. They had staged a play, but they forgot I was the one recording the show. The holding cell at the first precinct smelled of industrial bleach and the sour, lingering tang of human desperation. It was a cold, windowless box designed to make you feel small. I sat on the hard metal bench, my silk robe stained with Ivy's blood and dust. I looked at my hands. They were steady. The rage had condensed into a singular, sharp point of focus. Vance, you have a visitor, the guard announced. I was led into the interrogation room to face Detective Vance. He looked like a man who had seen every lie in Chicago and was bored by all of them. He tossed a thick folder onto the table. Quite a scene, Jade, he started. Your father, Dominic, gave a detailed statement. He says you've been extorting the family for months to cover gambling debts. He says you snapped when Ivy refused to pay. Gambling debts? I let out a sharp, dry laugh. I'm a forensic data analyst. I track money. I don't lose it on horses. He has proof, the detective countered, sliding a paper across the table. A transaction record. Today, at 6:45 p.m., you initiated a transfer from Ivy's account to yours. A test payment of $15. I stared at the paper. I remembered that moment. He's right about the transfer, but wrong about the motive. Tell me, Detective, did you pull the 911 logs? We did. 7:14 p.m. And the elevator logs? I leaned forward. The doorman didn't swipe my father up until 7:15 p.m. Dominic called 911, reporting an active assault a full minute before he even reached my door. He wasn't reporting a crime. He was narrating a script. Vance's expression flickered, but he shook his head. That's a discrepancy, but it doesn't explain Ivy's face. She has a shattered nose. 3 witnesses say you did it. The door buzzed open, and my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, stepped in. He placed a sleek laptop on the table and looked at me with a grim nod. Jade, they've executed a search warrant. Your father pointed them to your home server. It's been smashed to pieces with a fire extinguisher. He told them you destroyed it to hide evidence of your extortion. I felt a chill. Dominic was thorough. He thought breaking the box meant losing the secret. The physical server is gone? I asked. Total loss, Sterling replied. The DA is looking at a Class B felony. Unless we have something better than a timeline, you're going to trial. I looked at the two-way mirror, knowing Dominic and Beatrice were likely on the other side, basking in their victory. They thought they had erased me. Detective, Mr. Sterling, I said, a predatory smile spreading across my face. Dominic is old-fashioned. He thinks if you break the box, you kill the truth. But I don't trust hardware. I reached out and typed a 32-character encryption key into Sterling's laptop. Every camera in my house doesn't just record to a server. It syncs in real time to a secure offshore cloud in Switzerland. It's called ghost syncing. Even if you burn the house down, the shadows remain. I hit enter. The screen flickered to life. The video was high definition. The physical server is gone? I asked. Total loss, Sterling replied grimly. The DA is looking at a felony charge. Unless we have something more substantial than a timeline, you're heading straight to trial. I glanced at the two-way mirror, knowing Dominic and Beatrice were likely on the other side, savoring their perceived victory. They thought they had erased me. "Detective, Mr. Sterling," I said, a confident smile spreading across my face. "Dominic is old-fashioned. He thinks if you break the box, you kill the truth. But I don't trust hardware." I reached out and typed a 32-character encryption key into Sterling's laptop. Every camera in my house doesn't just record to a local server. It syncs in real time to a secure offshore cloud in Switzerland. It's called ghost syncing. Even if you level the building, the data remains. The truth unmasked. I hit enter. The screen flickered to life in high definition. There was Dominic, coaching Ivy through her performance. There was Beatrice, overturning furniture and shattering glass to stage the room. Then came the climax. Ivy, looking directly into the hidden lens with a cold, calculated smile before intentionally staging a struggle to frame the scene. "Make sure it sounds convincing, baby." Beatrice's voice echoed through the speakers. "We need the neighbors to believe a struggle is happening." The silence in the room was absolute. "That $15 transfer wasn't extortion," I said. "By accepting that money labeled as a fraud fee and then staging this entire incident, they've engaged in federal wire fraud and conspiracy. That's a RICO charge." I leaned back, the weight finally lifting off my shoulders. "Now," I said, "I want to watch you put the cuffs on them, and I want them tight." The atmosphere in the interrogation room shifted from stagnant to electric. Detective Vance stared at the laptop screen, replaying the moment Ivy's face met the steel doorframe. He watched the victims become the architects of their own destruction. Without a word, he grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Vance. Secure the witnesses in interrogation room B. Do not let them leave. I repeat, do not let Dominic or Beatrice Vance leave the building, and get an ambulance for the victim, but keep a guard on her door." I sat back, the cold metal of the chair no longer feeling like a cage, but a throne. Beside me, Mr. Sterling closed the laptop with a crisp snap. "I believe we're done here, Detective?" "Not quite," Vance said, his eyes now fixed on me with a newfound respect, or perhaps fear. "I need that full data dump. If what you're saying about the charity embezzlement is on there too, this just went from a domestic dispute to a federal landslide." "It's all there," I replied, my voice as sharp as a diamond. Every ledger Ivy altered, every offshore routing number Dominic used, and the $15 facilitation fee they were stupid enough to accept. They wanted a criminal? I'm giving them a whole syndicate. Vance nodded and exited the room. Through the small, reinforced window in the door, I watched the chaos unfold in the hallway. Officers who had been mocking me minutes ago were now scurrying toward the room where my parents were waiting. I turned to Sterling. "I want to see them before they're processed. I want them to know exactly which brick in their wall fell first." Sterling hesitated. "Jade, as your counsel, I advise against it. Let the law do the talking." "The law is a blunt instrument, Arthur," I said, using his first name for the first time. "I've spent 10 years feeling the sting of their lies. I want to be the last thing they see before the lights go out." 5 minutes later, Vance opened the door to Interrogation B. Dominic was mid-shout, his face purple, his finger jabbing the air at a bewildered junior officer. "This is an outrage! My daughter is a psychopath! I demand to know why I'm being held while that—" He stopped dead as I walked in. I wasn't wearing the handcuffs anymore. My silk robe was draped over my shoulders like a cape, and I stood tall, my head held high. Beatrice, sitting in the corner, let out a small, pathetic gasp. "Sit down, Dominic," I said. The sheer authority in my voice seemed to sap the air from the room. "How are you out?" Beatrice hissed, her tears long gone, replaced by a venomous sneer. "We told them everything. We have photos. Ivy is in the hospital." "The Ivy is in custody," Vance corrected, stepping in behind me. "And so are you." "We've seen the movie, Beatrice. Great acting, terrible choice of location. Jade's penthouse is more wired than a casino." Dominic's face went from purple to a sickly pale gray. His eyes flickered to me, then to the laptop Vance was holding. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The box he had smashed with the fire extinguisher was just a decoy. You bitch, he whispered, the mask of the grieving father finally falling away to reveal the monster beneath. You think this changes anything? We're your family. You're nothing without our name. Your name is about to be a case number, I said, leaning over the table until I was inches from his face. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. You thought you could use the same old tricks, the same poor Ivy and crazy Jade routine, but you forgot one thing, Dad. I paused, savoring the silence. In the world of data, the truth doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your family values. It only cares about the trail, and your trail leads straight to a federal cell. Jade, please, Beatrice whimpered, reaching out with a trembling hand. We did it for the family. We couldn't let Ivy go to jail. She's just a girl. She's 18, I barked, causing Beatrice to flinch. I was 16 when she put a knife in my shoulder and you stepped over my body. Was I just a girl then, Beatrice? Or was I just a convenient place to hide your sins? I turned my back on them. The invisible chain wasn't just snapped, it was pulverized. Detective, I said, walking toward the door. Make sure the FBI gets the encryption keys for the Foundation's Swiss accounts. I've already flagged the $250,000 transfer. It's not a loan anymore. It's evidence. As the officers moved in to read them their rights, for real this time, Dominic let out a guttural roar of rage. But as the heavy steel door slammed shut behind me, the sound was muffled, distant, and utterly powerless. I walked out into the cold Chicago night, the sirens still wailing in the distance. For the first time in a decade, I could breathe. The morning sun over Lake Michigan was cold and blinding, reflecting off the glass towers like 1,000 shards of ice. I stood on my balcony, the wind whipping my hair across my face, holding a glass of vintage wine I'd been saving for a day that felt like justice. It had been exactly 72 hours since the shattered silence of my penthouse. On the tablet resting on the railing, the headlines were a relentless stream of red and black. Philanthropy powerhouse crumbles. Dominic Vance and family indicted on federal RICO charges. Their mugshots were everywhere. Dominic looked aged, his arrogance replaced by a hollow stare. Beatrice looked frantic, her socialite facade cracked beyond repair. And Ivy, my sweet sociopathic sister, had a bandage across her nose and the look of a trapped animal. The doorman had told me the FBI spent 6 hours in my apartment, but they weren't looking for me. They were extracting the digital ghosts of the Vance Foundation. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mr. Sterling. Bail denied for all three. The feds found the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands thanks to your consultation fee breadcrumbs. It's over, Jade. The ledger is balanced. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like closure. Sharp, expensive, and final. The silence of my home was no longer heavy. The furniture had been replaced. The blood scrubbed from the walls, but the air felt different. For 24 years, I had been an entry in their book, a debt they thought they could collect whenever they were short on luck. I had spent a decade trying to prove I was worth something to them, only to realize that my true value lay in being the one person who could finally hold them accountable. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop one last time. I pulled up my contacts list. Dominic, Beatrice, Ivy. 3 names that had been a noose around my neck. With 3 clicks, I moved them to the archive. Then I hit permanently delete. I thought back to that girl on the kitchen floor in Ohio, the one who bled out in silence while her mother cooed over her attacker. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her, "Don't worry about the knife. One day, you'll be the one with the power, and you won't need a blade. You'll have the truth." The doorbell rang. I checked the monitor. It wasn't a monster from my past. It was a delivery person with a bouquet of white lilies I'd ordered for myself. I walked to the door, the same door Ivy had used to try and destroy me. I looked at the steel frame, now repainted and pristine. I ran my hand over the cool metal. It was no longer a weapon. It was just a part of my fortress. I opened the door, took the flowers, and looked out at the city. My career was intact. My reputation was ironclad, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't running. If you're holding on to people who drain your soul just because you share a bloodline, let go. Blood might be thicker than water, but it's a lot harder to clean off the floor. I had lost a family, but I had gained a soul. The debt was paid. The case was closed, and I was finally free. Family is about love, not pain. If they use your bloodline to bleed you dry, it's okay to walk away. You don't owe anyone your future, especially those who tried to destroy your past. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.